effect. Okay, but this is only at the phrases level. So we track the phrases and we try to find out the relationship between these key phrases and the stock price reactions to incidents. Okay, but we also want to look at the higher level, that's the disclosure level. So we use the text mining techniques. And text mining, you know that is being widely used in different fields, for example, fraud detection, or they can use it to have customer support, drug design. Okay, so they can come up with all kinds of information they need. And the text mining tool we use is the SAS text miner. Okay, it's a package tool, and of course the input is the risk factor disclosures, right? And when we put these disclosures into SAS, the SAS will decompose these disclosures into terms. Okay, that is, it decomposes the sentences into terms, and then it calculates a frequency for each term. Okay, and the frequency is the multiplication of how frequently a term shows up in that document times how frequently a term shows up in the whole data set. So in this case, we are able to do that. We can just find out the terms that do not consistently or repeatedly show up in the whole document. So we can find a better cluster here. Okay, and for the dimension reduction, we use this single value decomposition. And the good thing here is that, for example, we have two disclosures, and both disclosures have the word bank in it. Okay, the bank and the first, so if we read through disclosures, we might think that, okay, the banks are the same, but actually this bank, the word, is in totally different context. Okay, the bank in the first disclosure is about riverbank, but the second one is about commercial banks. So they are in totally different contexts, so we need an approach to differentiate this then. Okay, so as we can get the dimension reducted disclosures, we can do the cluster analysis. There are two approaches. One is hierarchical, and one is expectation maximization. Okay, and since our data is not anything about hierarchical, so we just use the expectation from maximization. And this methodology basically is as follows. That is, if we allocate or we will try to group a term into a certain cluster, we try to maximize the probability that the term will belong to that cluster. Okay, so we can find out that whether this term actually belongs to a certain cluster. Okay, and our result looks like the following. Okay, we have different resolutions. That means we try to have a robustness check the reduced dimensions. Okay, so we have a high dimension that we use almost 99% of the dimension we have in the original data set, and we have the median dimension and we have a low dimension. That is, we reduce 2/3 of the dimensions. Okay, so we have different granularity of this information, and as we can see that there's some negative impacts. The term, for example, the failure harm shows up in this disclosure, and we also have the subjects that might be affected. Okay, and this one is that we also do a trend analysis and see how these disclosures change across time starting from 1996 or 1997. Okay, so we have the 2-year group starting from 1997 to 2006. Okay, and as you can see that we have this failure, server, harm, interruption. Okay, and the subject that might be affected, say reputation, customer, data, operating results. And interestingly, we do this approach for the bridge firm and the control firm. Okay, and for the control firm, there are more action terms. Okay, they talk about more about performance, they talk about more about the operating results, but not for these bridge firms. Okay, in order to explain what these terms in the cluster means, we have this conceptual link. Okay, this one, bridge, is a term that showed up in our cluster. Okay, and there are many other terms showed up in our cluster. For example, attack. When we see this concept link for attack, we see that the concept, concept attack always co-occurred with denial in the paragraphs. Okay, so this concept link helps us to understand what are the phrases that generally co-occurred with the term that showed up in our cluster. So we can have a better feeling about what are the sentences or what are the paragraphs are about. Okay, so for example here, the bridge here it generally co-occur with delivering services or collecting payments, security breaches or fraudulent credit card transmission or secure transmission. Okay, confidential information. So it seems that for the breach companies, when they talk about the term breach, this term also co-occurs with some kind of confidentiality type of incident, right? So, but this is from the disclosures right before the incident. But what happens after the incident? As you can see that the breach do not co-occur with other terms that frequently. So here the breach is about security breach, it's about liability, it's about security measures. So in this case, after the company experiences some kind of information security risks, we found out that the term breach is more like a general term. Okay, just talk about the breach instead of if links to other confidentiality types stuff. So it seems that the breach companies try to provide more specific disclosures to the public after the incident. Okay, but on the other hand, we do the same thing for the control group. We found out that for the control group, they are still doing that general statements and more diversified risk factors. Okay, so the next part is that how can we find if we try to classify the disclosures into the breach company and non-breach company? So we can have an idea what's the differences between these two, right? Here we already have the key phrases analysis. We know that some keywords might relate to the cumulative abnormal return, that is stock price reactions. And we also know that the companies change their disclosure policy to more specific risk factors after the incident. Okay, so the next step is that what's the difference between the breach company and the controlled company? Okay, so we build a classification model. Okay, the classification model is built as follows. We take all the disclosures before the incidents. Okay, so we have the experiment group, the breach companies, and the control companies. And we use these disclosures to train the model. Okay, we use 80% of the data to train the model. That's 64 documents. And then we validate it and we test it. Okay, and the validation results show that the model can work accurately 75% of the time. Okay, that is three-fourths of the time the model can correctly predict or correctly classify a disclosure into the breach firm or non-breach firm. Okay, and based on this result, we use this model and apply this model to the disclosures after the incident and see what happens. And we see that the prediction or the accuracy rate dropped to 68%. Okay, then we try to have a robustness test on this result. So we keep adding on the disclosures about different control companies. For example, we try to find out the disclosures for the companies with different sizes in different industries that have not been breached, and that's not in our sample. And we find out that this classification accuracy drops to 50%. Okay, so the idea is that the companies learn from these incidents and they responded to it. Okay, they disclose more specific risk factors to the public. Okay, and they also increases their level of disclosure. They will try to add more disclosures to their financial reports. And the classification result explains why the policy changes is different from the breach company to the non-breach company. Okay, the idea is follows. If I know that I'm the breach company, I know that I've been breached. So I try to be more specific to that breach point. For example, I have been attacked by viruses. So I try to explain more about the viruses, but at the same time, I try to add more disclosures just in case that I might be attacked in the future. So because in this case, the disclosure cost is lower than the benefit I can get. Because if in the future, I'm going to have this denial of service attack, the stock price reactions will be smaller, right, if I told the investors in advance. Okay, but this is not the case for the control group. So we also see that there's a shift of these incident types. Okay, and the conclusion is that we found out that the disclosures of information security risk factors in financial reports can help investors understand what's